With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Friday, the 15th of December. Coming up today.
Victory for the Prince. In the last hour, a High Court judge has ruled that Prince Harry was probably hacked to a modest extent by Mirror Group newspapers. The Duke, who will be awarded over £140,000 in damages, has called it a great day for truth as well as accountability.
Hamas threats revealed. A Hamas plot to kill Jews in Europe has been foiled by Germany and Danish police. 7 terrorists have been arrested across multiple European countries. But are we at risk here at home?
Just Stop Starmer. Keir Starmer's family home has been targeted by radical Just Stop Oil protesters. This comes months after Rishi Sunak's home was scaled by Greenpeace activists.
I think politicians should expect a certain degree of protest, of people coming up to them, of all the rest of it. But to target a family home, where your children are, where your relatives who have no interest in frontline politics, that surely crosses a line.
I think it has a chilling effect, actually. The fear that you could be doorstepped like that by a protest group. Or by outside your own family home. Your children may be in there, your loved ones may be in there, in terms of identifying where you live and so on.
And this group effect, this intimidation going after the family of politicians, it's something that clearly this group of protesters have done to cause outrage, to cause headlines. But my goodness, if this catches on, if this becomes something that we're going to see again and again and again, we saw it with the Prime Minister's family home, we've seen it with Keir Starmer's family home, we're going to get no good people in politics if their families are gone after like this.
No, just because of the fear factor. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Do you think Just Stop Oil have gone too far by protesting outside Keir Starmer's family home? Let us know. But let's get the headlines with Lisa.
Good afternoon. It's just after 12 o'clock. I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB Newsroom. Prince Harry says it's a great day for truth and accountability after being awarded more than £140,000 in damages over phone hacking claims against a tabloid newspaper group. The High Court ruled there was extensive phone hacking by the Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011. The judge also said the Duke of Sussex's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent. In response, the publisher says they apologise unreservedly where historical wrongdoing took place. Prince Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, read out this statement earlier.
This case is not just about hacking. It is about a systemic practice of unlawful and appalling behaviour. followed by cover-ups and destruction of evidence, the shocking scale of which can only be revealed through these proceedings. The court has found that Mirror Group's principal board directors, their legal department, senior executives and editors such as Piers Morgan clearly knew about or were involved in these illegal activities.
The Home Secretary says the government must and will do more after one person died and another was left in a critical condition in the English Channel. A boat carrying migrants sank about 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk overnight. More than 60 people were rescued. James Cleverly described the incident as a horrific reminder of the people smugglers' brutality. But Chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds, says the government is not doing enough to stop criminal gangs.
Labour wouldn't be spending that money on Rwanda. It's eye-wateringly expensive. £400 million, it appears, is going to be spent on that scheme, and yet it would only cover about 1% of people who are arriving in the UK. Labour does have a different approach, and above all, it's focused on breaking up those criminal gangs.
UK police are working with French authorities to bring back a British schoolboy who went missing 6 years ago. Alex Batty, who is now 17, went missing in 2017 after going on a family holiday to Spain. Detectives believe he was abducted by his mother to live an alternative lifestyle abroad. Assistant Chief Constable from Greater Manchester Police, Chris Sykes, gave this update earlier, a warning that some of the images contains a lot of flashing.
Our main priority now is to see Alex returned home to his family in the UK, and our investigation team are working around the clock with partner agencies and the French authorities to ensure they are all fully supported. Alex and his family remain our focus, and we still have some work to do in establishing the full circumstances surrounding his disappearance and where he has been in all those years.
Police divers have marked out a specific area of water in their search for missing mother of three, Gaynor. Gaynor went missing after leaving work in Norwich city centre last Friday. Specialist divers are conducting a search in the River Wensum, where they positioned an orange buoy about 100 metres downstream. The force also released CCTV footage of what they believe is the last sighting of Miss Lord. Met Police officers will be trained to identify and call out sexism and misogyny. It's part of the force's 10-point plan outlining a series of commitments aimed at restoring public trust. It follows recent police scandals, including the unmasking of former officer David Carrick as a serial abuser and rapist. Russia has launched more than 40 drones and 6 missiles at Ukraine overnight. More than 11 people have been injured, including 3 children, after over a dozen buildings were damaged in the southern region of Odessa. Ukraine also says Russia attacked one of their ports and damaged the warehouses of 2 train storage facilities. NatWest Group says there is no evidence of discrimination due to political views in Coutts's decision to close customer accounts. The banking group says lawyers analysed 84 account closures from the 2 years before the review was commissioned. But NatWest admits lessons need to be learned. It's after Nigel Farage said that his Coutts bank account was shut down because the bank disagreed with his political beliefs. A farm business in Northumberland must pay more than £100,000 fine after an escaped cow killed a teacher. 61-year-old Marion Close was on a family walk in 2016 when the cow charged at her. J.M. Nixon and Sons, which runs Swinhoe Farm in Belford, admitted failing to ensure the safety of persons other than employees. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Emily and Tom.
Now, good news for Prince Harry. He's won 15 of 33 articles in his phone hacking lawsuit against Mirror Group newspapers after the High Court ruled the publisher had indeed been responsible for extensive phone hacking between 2006 and 2011.
Yes, 15 out of 33 for those who can count. That's almost half. The judge also said that Harry had experienced hurt by Mirror Group's concealment of their wrongdoing and awarded the Duke of Sussex over £140,000 in damages.
Yes, Mirror Group newspapers has since apologised unreservedly for historical wrongdoing.
Well, let's go now to the Royal Courts of Justice and speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, was this an expected outcome today?
Well, Tom, it's certainly one which Prince Harry will very much feel vindicated. As you said, 15 of the 33 articles he has won in this case against Mirror Group newspapers. His day in court back in June certainly has paid off, or should I say 2 days in court. If you remember, he subjected himself to 2 days of brutal cross-examination by Mirror Group newspaper lawyers, but the judge has ruled that Prince Harry was indeed a victim of phone hacking and other means of unlawful information gathering by journalists working for Mirror Group newspaper publications. So that's the Daily Mirror, Sunday Mirror and Sunday People as well, and has been awarded £140,600 in damages. But for Prince Harry, it's not about the money, I think it's fair to say. He sees it as his life's mission to really take the British press on, tabloids in particular, and change the way they operate. He sees himself as a victim. You mentioned in your link there that he's been truly hurt by some of the articles being written about him. Those articles include stories about his relationships with family members, including Prince William, his ex-girlfriend Chelsea Davy, and his time in the military as well. But I think instead of a judge's statement itself, I think what's been more powerful is the statement which Prince Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, read out in court a little bit earlier on. So he said that this, speaking for Prince Harry, that this is a great day for truth and accountability. He said that this case has revealed the shocking scale of systematic and appalling behaviour. The judge ruled that Piers Morgan clearly knew about phone hacking. That is something that Piers Morgan has always denied. We do not have a separate statement this morning from the former editor of the Daily Mirror as of yet. If we do get that, we will bring it to you. He also said that Harry's commitment is based on a real need for a free and honest press. That is what Prince Harry is striving for. He also called on the Metropolitan Police to prosecute and to investigate those who he believes have done wrong and bring charges if necessary. As you said, Mirror Group newspapers have released a statement saying they apologise unreservedly for the historical wrongdoing. But this is far from over. Prince Harry's fight against the British press is far from over. He has another three separate cases against newspaper groups, including Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Daily Mail, Mail on Sunday, and as well as News Group newspapers, publisher of The Sun and the now defunct News of the World, over alleged unlawful information gathering. Another separate libel case against the Associated Newspapers, and another case against the British Home Office over their decision to not provide him with the same degree of police protection when he stepped back as a working member of the royal family. So today, very much a victory for Prince Harry, but it's a long way to go. It's a long road.
Yes, it is a long road. Lots and lots of court cases to come. What is next? Are we expecting Prince Harry to return to the UK at some point? Will he be present for future court hearings?
I think it's highly likely that in the future court hearings for The Sun and indeed for The Sun, but that's News Group newspapers and Associated Newspapers, when those two alleged unlawful information gathering cases go to trial, I would suspect he would also be a witness in those cases as well. Remember, back in June, for this case against Mirror Group newspapers, Prince Harry was the first senior royal in 130 years to take to the witness box to give evidence. The world's media descended descended on this court building behind me, the Rolls building, part of a Royal Court of Justice, to listen to Prince Harry speak in court. And I suspect, because he's done well in this court case, he's won 15 out of the 33 articles, it will definitely give him a confidence boost to do the same thing when it comes to his cases against Associated Newspapers and News Group newspapers. I must stress that both Associated and News Group both deny the allegations made against them.
Now, thinking about the parts of this case that Harry won versus the parts he did not win, this is being described as a victory for Prince Harry across the board. But of course, he only won 15 out of 33 counts. What didn't he win?
Well, the judge in his ruling made the point that Prince Harry very much felt that every article written about him, or what he believed was an intrusive article written about him, resulted from phone hacking, because at the time, phone hacking was so widespread amongst Mirror Group newspaper journalists, not just to do with Prince Harry, but other high-profile figures who are being targeted by journalists. That's what the judge has ruled. So the judge was saying that essentially, although Prince Harry perhaps believes that it was phone hacking, it could have come from other means, and there just simply wasn't the evidence to come to some kind of conclusion on the balance of probabilities. But still, 15 out of 33 cases has landed him with £140,000, 600 worth of damages.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you, Cameron Walker, for bringing us the very latest. Our royal correspondent there, of course. Now, should we get some more reaction? Let's speak to former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. Michael, you've been following these various cases. What's your instant reaction to what we've seen today? Is this a big victory for Prince Harry?
Good afternoon, Emily. Good afternoon, Tom. Make no mistake, this is a major victory, a day of vindication for Prince Harry. It's also a day of shame and humiliation for Mirror Group newspapers. For the tabloid press in general, I believe that this is a moment as grave as the terrible case of Millie Dowler, the young girl in Surrey who was abducted and murdered while tabloid journalists were hacking her phone, allowing her mother to believe that she was still alive. It is as serious as that, and Prince Harry will take particular interest, I think, in the fact that the judge, Mr. Justice Fancourt, said there was an aggravating factor, that information about what was going on rose as high as the executive suites and indeed the boardroom of Mirror Group newspapers. So there's potentially criminal behavior there. The costs, the damages that have been accrued and assessed at £140,600, they're quite modest, but that is not the point. The point is that he's managed to prove that his phone was being hacked and stories were being blagged. That's, by other words, using illicit and deceitful means to obtain information about him, which should not have been done. He only really had to prove one of those cases. He proved 15 out of 33, and that is quite enough for him. And the statement that he issued, which his barrister read out, I mean, it had his fingerprints, it had his tone of voice, whether he wrote it or he dictated it, talking about vendetta journalism. This is, without any doubt, his day in court. He has triumphed, and I think there'll be some serious meetings going on at other newspaper groups because the implications of this judgment today are widespread and very serious for the British press.
Absolutely, and of course Prince Harry has further legal cases against other newspapers, but also against individuals, even against the government in one case. Not all about phone hacking, of course, but I suppose this will put some wind in his sails for his future legal crusades.
Absolutely. I think he's got the bit between his teeth, if we talk about it in equestrian terms. He's really going for it. He feels a zeal. He's on a crusade. And nothing, I think, will hold him back now. As Cameron said so expertly earlier, I think there are 4 other cases going at the moment. He is certainly the prince of litigation, and he's not going to give up now. I think this victory will certainly hearten him. And I have no doubt that it's a very difficult thing for him to have done, because it opened him up to all sorts of scrutiny. The problem he does have, to a certain extent, is the fact that he's invaded his own privacy on many, many occasions with his book Spare, published in January, and with the television programmes that we've all seen and perhaps some of us have enjoyed and others less so. He's been talking about his family, he's making statements, he's been giving interviews, and in a way he's been talking about his private life. What he's objecting to is the illicit, illegal, and frankly quite scandalous way old Fleet Street used to operate against him. And I think to some extent, to be fair, some of those practices are no longer pursued, but they certainly were when he was a younger man, and that's been proven in court. And he's due his vindication, and we have to say that he's had it, and in spades.
This definitely seems to be a life ambition in terms of what he's going to do next. Thank you very much, Michael Cole, former BBC Royal correspondent. Thank you very much for your time, as always. It's a tricky one. My sympathy sometimes does run a bit dry with Prince Harry, but I guess this is a vindication.
I mean, this is one of the more clear-cut cases, isn't it? There are some others where perhaps there's less sympathy with regard to his demand that the British taxpayer picks up his security and all the rest of it. But this, it does seem that there was a clear transgression. But in other news, German and Danish police have successfully foiled a Hamas plot to kill Jews in Europe, with the Danish Prime Minister describing the plot as being as serious as it gets.
In total, 7 suspected Hamas operatives were arrested across Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands. But some are warning that Hamas's decision to no longer confine itself to attacking Jews in Israel is a very worrying sign.
So what could it mean for us here in the UK? Might Hamas have operatives on our streets? Let's speak to the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Chip Chapman. Chip, thank you so much for joining us. Is this to be expected, that this conflict and these potential for attacks spill beyond the borders of Gaza, the Palestinian territories and Israel?
Well, it would be a new thing for external ops planning to be conducted by Hamas, so that would be extraordinarily new and a worrying and escalatory development. Now, we actually divide these things into 3 types. So the first type would be directed from and controlled by. That's essentially what the arrests here have done. That is very difficult to get through because the larger scale plots and the more people you have involved, you get leakage from the plotters, and the competence of the security agencies often can find those. So I don't think you'll see too much of that. And of course, there's very little plausible deniability from that. The second group would be sort of endorsed by, that is, if an attack takes place and they say, I did this on behalf of Hamas, Hamas might well say he was a soldier of Hamas. But the more worrying one, I think, is the energizing of the single-issue terrorist, and that is inspired by what is going on in Gaza at the moment. That is worrying because you often, in terms of the Israeli, either West Bank or Gaza, things get what we call flare-ups. And each flare-up has generally in the past been of a very short order. So, for example, the 2021 Operation Guardian of the Walls against the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, actually in that case in Gaza, was 11 days. The 2014 intervention by Israel was 19 days. And the 2008 intervention was 18 days. Now we're up to nearly day 70, and it's that which endures. And of course, the counter-terrorist strategy from the UK, which was revised in July this year, did say that terrorism is enduring and evolving. I think we're going to see another turn here of the enduring and evolving. And it is those single-issue terrorists, the lone wolves, essentially, that's what they were called before, because the haystack is getting bigger and the needle is getting smaller. It doesn't mean an attack is inevitable. It does mean that we'll see more hate crime. We've already seen that in terms of anti-Semitism, anti-Islam actions, and we've also seen more extremism in terms of the referrals to the counter-terrorist internet referral unit, in the CT hotline, counter-terrorist hotline, and in the number of people who've been reported to the PREVENT strategy. That is one of the elements of the counter-terrorist strategy.
Well, this is one of the concerns, how well our Prevent programme and identifying these individuals that are potentially being radicalised and taking on an extremist ideology, and whether they will then go on to commit terror attacks. How well are we doing in terms of identifying those individuals that could potentially be a threat?
Well, you have to separate, again, two things there. So the Prevent strategy is to stop those who are being radicalised going into, obviously, a attack plotting. And if they were radicalised to the point of view that they were attack plotting, they would be in the pursue part of counter-terrorism. That is, they would be picked up by the agencies and the counter-terrorist police. So it's not a linear progression from any of these things. So just because you've got more people who've been reported to the counter-terrorist hotline doesn't mean that there'll be a algorithmic progression to more terrorism. It might lead to more investigations, but that is a good thing if they then triage that in terms of the subjects of interest and those who might have previously been closed subjects of interest and therefore investigated and, if necessary, arrested. Now, most of the arrests at the moment have been really to do with, prescription sort of offences, those who've been supporting Hamas through speech, not through progressing to terrorism itself, because very few plots actually go into direct action lethality, and that's why there are very few terrorist attacks in the UK, because of the competence of the security agencies. Doesn't mean it won't happen. Those lone wolves, either by a bladed weapon or vehicle as a weapon, the entry point for that is quite low. You just need to have a capable hand or a driving licence.
And of course, as that old adage goes, our counter-terrorism forces have to be lucky every single time. The terrorists have to be lucky once. But Chip Chapman, thank you so much for talking us through those pretty concerning developments on continental Europe.
Yes, indeed. Now, coming up, our Home and Security editor joins us for the latest on the sad death in the Channel overnight. One person remains in a critical condition. See you very shortly.
Just to jump in here. A body has been found in Norwich. Of course, we were looking at that Gaynor Lord case. We've been looking at it all week. To repeat, the police have found a body in Norwich. Much more on this as we get it.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we have some breaking news for you. A body has been found in the search for Gaynor Lord. She was, of course, the missing 55-year-old mum who went missing in Norwich. A body has been found, we understand, in the search. She went missing, of course, after she finished work early at a department store in Norwich last Friday. And we're hearing now that police have found a body and recovered it from the River Wensum.
Yes, to retrace her steps on Friday. She left work slightly early. CCTV footage has been released of Gaynor Lord running through the streets of Norwich, rushing across the cobbled stones and indeed also dodging traffic as she rushes across the city centre,
I'd just say
dodging
here
cars along the way.
That Norfolk police they've said police searching for the missing Norwich woman, Gaynor Lord, can confirm a body has been found in the River Wensum. While the body hasn't formally been identified, Gaynor's family have been informed. They continue to be supported by specially trained officers. So that's what Norfolk police have said. They haven't formally identified the body, but Gaynor Lord's family have been informed.
And, of course, the body was discovered this morning. The news has only just been released by Norwich Police, but the body was found in a narrowed underwater search this morning. It has now been recovered from the water. Of course, family being informed, although the body not yet formally identified. Now the media and the country has been told. But this has been the most curious story. Still so many unanswered questions. Why did Gaynor Lord leave work early? Why did she rush across town? We heard one instance of a witness seeing her doing yoga in the park next to the River Wensum, where now a body has been discovered. This has been a very curious tale and a very distressing 7 days.
Yes, so just to reiterate, the police force have confirmed that they recovered a body from the River Wensum. The family of Gaynor Lord have been notified. The body is yet to be formally identified. We'll be on the scene in just one moment after your latest headlines with Lisa.
It's just after 12:30. I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB newsroom. Specialist divers searching for missing mother of three in Norwich have found a body in the River Wensum. Gaynor Lord went missing after leaving work in Norwich city centre last Friday. Norfolk police say while the body hasn't formally been identified, Gaynor's family have been informed. They continue to be supported by specially trained officers. Prince Harry says it's a great day for truth and accountability after being awarded more than £140,000 in damages over phone hacking claims against a tabloid newspaper group. The High Court ruled there were extensive phone hacking by the Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011. The judge also said the Duke of Sussex's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent. In response, the publisher says they apologise unreservedly where historical wrongdoing took place. The Home Secretary says the government must and will do more after one person died and another was left in a critical condition in the English Channel. A boat carrying migrants sank about 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk overnight. More than 60 people were rescued. James cleverly described the incident as a horrific reminder of the people smugglers' brutality. UK police are working with French authorities to bring back a British schoolboy who went missing 6 years ago. Alex Batty, who is now 17, went missing in 2017 after going on a family holiday to Spain. Detectives believe he was abducted by his mother to live an alternative lifestyle abroad. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Now, Norfolk police confirm that specialist divers have found a body in the river Wensum in Norwich. We've been learning this breaking news just in the last 10 minutes. Let's cross now to the site, to the scene of what has all been going on there. Theo Chakomba, our reporter, is on site. Theo, what's the very latest here?
Yes, well, in the last hour or so, the position we were in, we're seeing the dive teams here on the River Wensum, about 100 metres in that direction. But around 11 o'clock, they moved to this area and cordoned off this road where we are at the moment. Just over my right shoulder, there was a boat which was searching there with the underwater specialist team who are still there with forensic teams. But in the last few minutes, we have had confirmation from Norfolk Police in a statement saying police searching for missing Norwich woman Gaynor can confirm a body has been found in the River Wensum. Police searching can confirm that a body has been found here, and the body was found by underwater search teams this morning and has now been recovered from the water. And they went on to say while the body hasn't formally been identified, Gaynor's family have been informed they continue to be supported by specially trained officers. Now, of course, in the last few days, we have been seeing a huge team, around 60 officers working from morning to the evening, working alongside Norfolk Police, as Lincolnshire Police. Those specialists have been here each and every day. But of course, that is the latest. Although they haven't confirmed the identification of the body, police do say they have informed Gaynor's family.
Thank you very much, Theo, for bringing us that. Just a reminder there on the screen, we're looking at CCTV footage of Gaynor on the day that she disappeared. We now find out that a body has been recovered from the River Wensum in Norwich, but yet to be formally identified.
What an extensive search operation it has been indeed. Well, coming up, nearly 1 million households will see their council tax go up. We'll have more on this and whether it affects your area after this short break.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 12:39 in the afternoon. And is your council about to go bankrupt? Because it seems more and more of them are. Nearly 1 million households will see their council tax go up. That's after Labour-run councils in Bradford and Cheshire East have warned they are at risk of going bankrupt. They may have to issue one of these Section 114 notices, which essentially means they're unable to balance their books. So it's not a great state of affairs.
Certainly not. Let's dig into the detail now with the head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, Elliot Keck. And Elliot, does this mean that where councils go bankrupt, those who live within the jurisdiction of those councils will see their tax go up?
Well, good afternoon, Tom and Emily. It almost certainly will. The examples of bankrupt councils from the previous financial year, Croydon, Slough and Thurrock, all saw their council tax rise, not just by the 5% that most places saw, that 5% being the referendum cap above which you'd have to hold a local vote. They saw their council tax go up by 10 or even 15%. So if you look at the examples of Birmingham, Nottingham, Woking and possibly Cheshire East, I think that's certainly on the cards, and I think that's certainly going to be something that's going to be threatening household bills when those council tax requests go out in April.
Elliot, now the Taxpayers Alliance is often quite critical about waste when it comes to local councils. You highlight where they're misusing taxpayers' money, spending too much on things that don't really matter. But aren't we sometimes a little bit too harsh with these councils? They have got an awful lot to do, so many services, so many demands. Is it understandable that they might have to put council tax up?
I think when you can always look at councils on an individual basis, and some councils do face serious pressures that may need small rises in council tax. But to take the examples of the councils that have gone bankrupt, all of them are individual cases of quite catastrophic financial incompetence and mismanagement. Max Caller, who is the local government commissioner that has been sent to Birmingham to try and sort out the finances, has been absolutely excoriating. Has called it a self-inflicted disaster from the council. In the case of Nottingham, they tried to set up a not-for-profit energy firm that went spectacularly wrong. And Thurrock, Slough, Croydon, you see similar cases. So there are individual councils that are relatively well run, but nevertheless face pressures, particularly on social care. And there's an individual element of council tax that allows you to put it up dedicated for specifically social care. But when we're talking about some of these 10-15% rises that we may be seeing as a result of bankruptcies, I think it is really the town halls that are to blame.
Is there an issue here with regard to a disconnect between economic activity in an area and the revenue of a council? In many countries around the world, if a council area, I don't know, approves construction or gets businesses operating in their local area, they have some of that uplift. In the UK, almost all that money goes to central government instead of going to local government. Are the structures here simply really bad incentives for creating cash in the first place?
Yeah, Tom, I think you're absolutely right. I think the funding of local government is too centralised, and it should be decentralised. We've put forward proposals for something like a local income tax. But actually, I think you're being a little too generous on councils. They are allowed to reclaim a significant amount of business rates. You obviously have Section 106 payments, which is when a developer is building a new property or construction project, and they have to pay the council in order to fund local services. So there is an incentive for councils to build, but it's just very, very frustrating that so many have been taken over by a culture of NIMBYism in which actually they'd rather to ask their local taxpayers for more money rather than using the construction projects and the various developments that could bring some economic growth to the area.
Yeah, and Elliot, I'm not sure where they think they're going to get this money from. People are hard-pressed as it is across the country. But am I right in thinking that usually councils have to hold some kind of local referendum to increase taxes higher than 5%? So do they have to actually, or can they get the sign-off from Westminster?
So what they will do, and Nottingham have already indicated that they're going to do this, is they'll make a special request essentially to Michael Gove, who's the relevant Secretary of State, for them to be allowed to increase council tax above that 5% referendum limit that you mentioned. That's what happened, as I said, with Croydon, Thurrock and Slough. And that is, I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen with Birmingham and Nottingham. And they face council tax rises for the average Band D payer of potentially £280 and £362 for Birmingham and Nottingham, respectively, if they're allowed that 15% level, slightly lower if it's 10%.
Why is it that just now we're seeing so many councils going bankrupt? Obviously, in Birmingham, there was an issue with regard to gender pay and some court case that was lost and all the rest of it. But why across the country are we seeing so many bankruptcies?
And why in mostly Labour-run councils?
Well, I mean, Labour certainly have had the recent examples of Birmingham and Nottingham. To be fair to Labour, Thurrock was Conservative run, as was Woking when it actually got into financial trouble, albeit it's not Conservative run anymore. I think basically a variety of council tax rises, low interest rates, government funding has allowed to paper over the cracks for council budgets for many, many years. Now that you've seen central government funding a bit more restricted, although it has gone up in recent years, now that you've seen a bit of inflation, you've seen higher interest rates, actually the already poor state of the council's finances have essentially been exposed, and that's why you're seeing this beginning trend.
Thank you very much, Elliot Keck, who is the head of campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance. Have a fabulous weekend. I'm sure you will.
It's interesting. We constantly talk about how bad it is that interest rates have gone up, but potentially what was really bad in the first place is how low they were, and we got used to running the whole country on free money, on borrowed money, and now we're facing the consequences of that poor decision-making for years and years and years, people running on easy, cheap credit. It's not a sustainable way to run an economy. And as soon as interest rates go up, even by a little bit, it tips everyone over into a sense of chaos.
Yeah, it's hard not to roll your eyes when you see some of the things these local councils will spend money on, whether it's, you know, a festival of something or another, or changing road signs, or, you know, all of this sort of stuff. They do waste a lot of money. I wonder if there's some efficiencies that could be made before they ask people to pay so much in council tax. And it's quite a lot of your outgoings, actually, council tax, depending on where you are. It really can eat into your disposable income if you've got any.
Certainly can.
Makes me angry.
Well, in other news that will surely make Emily not angry at all, Police Scotland says 29 stations are now at risk of closure as it seeks to raise funds to plug, guess what, a budget gap.
Gosh, Fetties and Leith stations in Edinburgh and Glasgow's Stewart Street station are among some of the buildings that could be sold off.
Well, the Deputy Chief Constable, Malcolm Graham, says that it had a large and ageing estate that was no longer fit for purpose.
Well, joining us now is our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, why are so many police stations at risk then? Is it just a case of not enough money to keep them open?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily, and indeed good afternoon, Britain. I would say that it's probably a part of that. I think we need to remember that Police Scotland was actually formed back in 2013 when 8 different regional police agencies came together all under one banner. Now, what Police Scotland have said today was that really the estate, as you say, isn't fit for 21st century policing, and that this is all really part of modernising the combined estate which they got together in 2013. Now, I'm outside Stewart Street today in Glasgow, one of the stations you mentioned there, and this is one of 29 that are facing closure all across Scotland. But unfortunately, the bad news doesn't stop there. There's another 16 properties, either vacant or land with no building, that Police Scotland are looking to sell off to bridge this funding gap. And beyond that, there is yet another 14 closures that will be introduced at a later date. So the arithmetic aficionados among you will know that that's around 59 properties that Police Scotland are currently looking at just now. Now, unsurprisingly, opposition politicians are coming out quite strong and hard against this move. Russell Findlay, who's the Scottish Conservative Shadow Justice Minister, well, he said that, pointed out that this all comes after 140 stations have already closed under the SNP. Meanwhile, David Kennedy, who's the Scottish Police Federation General Secretary, has said that he blames the £2 billion gap, funding that has been reduced for Police Scotland over the last decade. And again, Scottish Labour have called this another unnecessary hammer blow to Scottish policing. I think if we take a small step back and we just look at the bigger picture very quickly, Scotland's crime rates are actually fairly good just now. We're looking at about 528 per 10,000 populace, and back in 2004, 2005, that was up over 1,000 crimes per 10,000 Scots. Now, even with that, last month we saw that the Chief Constable, Joe Farrell, asked for an extra 128 million to fund a gap. But certainly Police Scotland very much sounds like it's on the ropes at the minute, and it's going to need a lot of government help when we hear the budget next week.
Yes, it does indeed, and I've read that Humza Yousaf is thinking about raising taxes on middle earners and higher earners. I guess there is a huge financial gap in the Scottish Government. Thank you very much for your time, Tony Maguire, our Scotland reporter. I mean, Scotland isn't alone. Hundreds of police stations in England and Wales have been closed in the last decade or so.
But Scotland is alone in having amalgamated all these different police forces into one, so that now the same police force is in charge of Gretna Green and the Outer Hebrides. It's very odd. It's now the largest police force in the country.
What, so you think that means it wouldn't work then?
Just the geographic spread of it. I'm not sure that this idea of sort of centralising and consolidating and all the rest of it has clearly led to some of these decisions.
Now, this is a bit of a Rishi Sunak special, this one. British teens could soon all be learning good financial decision-making and studying literature until the age of 18, while some could be taught business English under Rishi Sunak's plans for an advanced British standard qualification.
Well, I suppose English to 18 would match maths to 18, but it would be a major overhaul of A-levels, which the Prime Minister announced back at his party conference. He wants pupils to study 5 subjects instead of 3 and take English and maths until the age of 18.
Right, let's get the thoughts now of mathematics teacher Bobby Seagull. Bobby, thank you very much for joining us. I want to drill down into the maths bit of this, because I understand that Rishi Sunak wants children to be learning about mortgage rates, how to get a mortgage, how to fill in a tax return. Is this a good use of is this a good use of teaching time? I wonder if a more of a back to basics approach is what we should be having. What do you think?
So I think it's a combination of both, because according to a charity called National Numeracy, Emily and Tom, 1 in 2 adults in the UK actually have the numeracy standard we'd expect from an 11-year-old primary school child. So that's 1 in 2 adults out there have the numeracy skills from an 11-year-old primary school child. So clearly that's not acceptable. So again, the back to basics, making sure people have got their arithmetic and basic decimals and percentages, the things that you need to function in daily life. But again, one of the things I'll tell you, Emily and Tom, is that sometimes I'm quite short. I'm at 5'5". Occasionally at Stratford Station, I bump into some of my old students. They'll be like towering above me and say, "Hello, Mr. Seagull." I'm like, "Do I know you?" And they'll say, "Oh, sir, you're our teacher." And they'll, most of the time they're, "Sir, you're a great teacher." But they'll often tell me the thing that they really wanted to learn at school, especially regarding maths, is the practical bits of maths. Like, again, how to understand tax, how to understand rent, mortgages. So again, these are mathematical skills that apply in a real life
Bobby,
context.
just on that though, is there not a problem for those who may want to go on and study maths or economics or business at university? They need to know all the theory to get their qualifications. This might be useful for people who are leaving school age 18 and not going on to further study. But for those who are going on to more academic studies, would it not just be eating into that time?
Yeah, again, this is all about finding a compromise, because the reality is, if you spend more time doing the sort of practical day-to-day functional maths, you're going to lose some time for the theoretical maths, which again enables our mathematicians, our physicists and scientists to develop. So again, it depends on ultimately, what does the government see as the purpose of our education? Is it to sort of inspire young minds, again, teach them about the literature of Shakespeare and Chaucer and the mathematics of Newton and Leibniz? Or is it to make sure that we have young people that are equipped to deal in the real world? And I think somewhere in between, we know about politics, there's a nuanced answer where it's not all about just Chaucer and calculus, but it's not all about just practical nitty-gritty verbs and how to write an email. Somewhere in the middle, there's some sort of answer. And again, I think with this particular scheme with Advanced British Standard, I think the government said it might take up to 10 years to overhaul the current A-levels. So, I'm intrigued to see if it ever gets there. But I think in principle, I do support the idea of having a reformed A-level, because, again, our parents' generation will talk about the gold standard of the A-level. I don't think it's quite what it used to be. So anything that makes Britain upstanding again in education, I can sort of applaud quietly.
And it is strange, of course. We whittle everything down to 3 by the age of 18. Almost no other country does that. Not America, not France, not Germany, certainly not East Asian countries either. But Bobby Seagull, thank you so much for talking us through that big proposed reform.
Yes, lots more to come in the next hour, so stay with us.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. A dry but cloudy day for most today, quite breezy as well. Now, most places will be dry, but we are going to see further outbreaks of rain across northwest Scotland, and that will continue for much of the weekend. High pressure is dominating down to the south, but weather fronts at times will be toppling in. So, as I said, bringing some rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. It's getting quite windy here also. A bit breezy elsewhere, but most areas just dry and cloudy. There are some breaks in the cloud across eastern England, so you may get a glimmer of brightness, a hint of sunshine, but say most just having a grey day. Fairly mild, though, despite the lack of sunshine. 8-9 degrees in the east, 10 or 11, maybe 12 further west. The rain may ease for a time over northwest Scotland this evening, but we'll see further outbreaks of rain coming in here through the nighttime period and staying very windy also. Elsewhere, a bit of breeze, a lot of cloud. Some mist and fog patches are possible as temperatures in the east may dip down to 5 or 6 Celsius, but certainly in the west, a very mild night. Some places staying in double digits. And we see little change during Saturday. If anything, the rain's going to pep up, though, in the northwest, and that could cause some problems as it really builds up through the course of the weekend. But away from the northwest, most places will be dry tomorrow. Some drizzle at times around western coasts and hills. But again, most areas just rather drab, breezy, but very mild for the middle part of December.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Friday, the 15th of December. Coming up.
The search for Gaynor Lord. In the last hour, Norfolk police have confirmed that specialist divers have recovered a body in the River Wensum. Although the body has not been formally identified, Miss Lord's family have been informed. We'll be live in Norfolk with the latest.
Victory for the Prince. A High Court judge has ruled that Prince Harry was probably hacked to a modest extent by Mirror Group newspapers. The Duke, who will be awarded over £140,000 in damages, has called it a great day for truth as well as accountability.
Hamas threat revealed. A Hamas plot to kill Jews in Europe has been foiled by Germany and Danish police. 7 terrorists in total have been arrested across multiple European countries. But are we at risk here at home? It's a desperately sad situation, of course, in Norwich, where a body has now been discovered. And we just learned that we will be expecting a press conference from police in Norwich within the next hour or so. Of course, the body has not yet been identified, but clearly this mysterious case over the last 7 days is coming to some sort of conclusion this afternoon.
Yes, we'll hear from the police and we'll, of course, bring that to you as well. She, of course, went missing a week ago now, and now the very latest that this body has been recovered from the River Wensum. We'll bring you the very latest as we get it, but first, your headlines with Lisa.
Good afternoon, it's just after 1 o'clock. I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB Newsroom. Specialist divers searching for a missing mother of 3 in Norwich have found a body in the River Wensum. Gaynor Lord went missing after leaving work in Norwich city centre last Friday. Norfolk police say while the body hasn't been formally identified, Gaynor's family have been informed. They continue to be supported by specially trained officers. Prince Harry says it's a great day for truth and accountability after being awarded more than £140,000 in damages over phone hacking claims against a tabloid newspaper group. The High Court ruled there were extensive phone hacking by the Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011. The judge also said the Duke of Sussex's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent. In response, the publisher says they apologise unreservedly where historical wrongdoing took place. Prince Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, read out this statement earlier. Sorry, some technical problems. We'll bring that to you later. The Home Secretary says the government must and will do more after one person died and another was left in a critical condition in the English Channel. A boat carrying migrants sank about 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk overnight. More than 60 people were rescued. James cleverly described the incident as a horrific reminder of the people smugglers' brutality. But Chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodd, says the government is not doing enough to stop criminal gangs.
Labour wouldn't be spending that money on Rwanda. It's eye-wateringly expensive. £400 million, it appears, is going to be spent on that scheme, and yet it would only cover about 1% of people who are arriving in the UK. Labour does have a different approach, and above all, it's focused on breaking up those criminal gangs.
UK police are working with French authorities to bring back a British schoolboy who went missing 6 years ago. Alex Batty, who is now 17, went missing in 2017 after going on a family holiday to Spain. Detectives believe he was abducted by his mother to live an alternative lifestyle abroad. Assistant Chief Constable from Greater Manchester Police, Chris Sykes, gave this update earlier, a warning that this contains flashing images.
Our main priority now is to see Alex returned home to his family in the UK, and our investigation team are working around the clock with partner agencies and the French authorities to ensure they are all fully supported. Alex and his family remain our focus, and we still have some work to do in establishing the full circumstances surrounding his disappearance and where he has been in all those years.
Met police officers will be trained to identify and call out sexism and misogyny. It's part of the force's 10-point plan outlining a series of commitments aimed at restoring public trust. It follows recent police scandals, including the unmasking of former officer David Carrick as a serial abuser and rapist. Relatives of 2 people killed at a London music venue have renewed their appeal for information 1 year on from a fatal crush. 23-year-old security guard Gabby Hutchinson and 33-year-old Rebecca I.Q. Mello were killed when fans without tickets tried to force their way into the Brixton Academy last year. The Met has recently released CCTV images of people they wished to speak to about the incident and confirmed that one arrest had been made. The parents of Rebecca say they want justice.
We don't know what happened to her. We don't know how she died. And we're still waiting for information as to how this happened. And I mean, the most important thing is we don't want this to happen to another family.
NatWest Group says there is no evidence of discrimination due to political views in Coutts' decision to close customer accounts. The banking group says lawyers analysed 84 account closures from the 2 years before the review was commissioned. But NatWest admits lessons need to be learned. It's after Nigel Farage said that his Coutts bank account was shut down because the bank disagreed with his political beliefs. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 6 minutes past 1 and it's almost 7 minutes past 1. But Norfolk Police confirm specialist divers searching for Gaynor Lord have found a body in the River Wensum.
They're yet to formally identify the body, but her family have been notified. Our national reporter Theo Chicomba is on the scene for us now. Theo, thank you very much for talking to us. So the latest is a body has been recovered from the River Wensum.
Yes, well, very good afternoon to you both. So, as we've seen in the last couple of days, specialist officers, a team of around 60, including officers who work here in Norwich, have been working around Wensum Park and Wensum River, which you may be able to see just over my right shoulder. And if we can as well just see just over my right shoulder, there's a bush area just there, and the underwater specialist team moved to this area, which is around 100 meters from the area they had been searching over the last couple of days. This sort of happened quite quickly before 11 a.m. and it wasn't quite clear where they were going, but we did follow them and they came to this area, and shortly after that we began to see forensic vans turn up. And then in the last hour we saw that confirmation that a body has been found, although not formally identified, but Norfolk Police have said they have been in contact with Gaynor Lord's family. Now, the 55-year-old went missing last week. A week today, she left her workplace just after 2 p.m, just over an hour before she was due to leave, and she was seen going through town. We saw those CCTV images this week, and that was part of the police's investigation to find out what had happened. But of course, in that statement, they did say the body was found in the river by underwater search teams this morning and has now been recovered. And as well, just to reiterate, while the body hasn't been formally identified, Gaynor's family have been informed and they continue to be supported by specially trained officers.
Theo, for those of us who haven't been at an investigation like this, you've been down by the river for a few days, or at least a couple of days. What's the investigation, the search been like? Have it been very methodical, moving down the river?
Yes, so while they started, I'd say a couple hundred meters in this direction. The river flows this way towards the city centre of Norwich, and they've been working each day, progressively moving towards this direction. We did see some specialist officers in a boat coming towards this direction yesterday, but they did then return. But it is today, though, that they did come back this way, and they started focusing on this area in particular, an area which they hadn't done so earlier this week. But of course, that news, they did say they have found a body this morning following those investigations.
And Theo, we're now expecting a press conference coming up within the hour.
Yes, so just after 2 p.m. we're expecting to hear from Chief Superintendent Dave Buckley, who we heard from yesterday, and he's going to be providing the latest update with more further details, we'll presume. We're not quite sure what he's going to say in that, but we've just been told that he's going to provide some further updates, and perhaps they may be able to give some further information, stuff they hadn't disclosed in the last few days.
Well, we'll look forward to that in around 50 minutes' time. But Theo Chicomba, for now, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Theo. Now, Prince Harry has hailed today as a great day for truth as well as accountability. That's after winning on 15 of 33 articles in his phone hacking lawsuit against Mirror Group newspapers.
Yes, the High Court ruled that the publisher had indeed been responsible for extensive phone hacking between 2006 and 2011. and awarded the Duke of Sussex over £140,000 in damages.
Mirror Group Newspapers has since apologised unreservedly for historical wrongdoing.
Let's go now to the Royal Courts of Justice, where our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has been following the case. And Cameron, this is a significant win for Harry.
Oh, absolutely, Tom. I mean, his 2 days in court back in June, where he gave evidence inside the courtroom, the first senior royal to do so in 130 years, has certainly paid off. Prince Harry, as you've been saying, has hailed this as a bit of a victory, a vindication for him. He's been awarded more than £140,000 in damages from Mirror Group Newspapers, who he accused, and the judge has ruled that Harry is a victim of phone hacking and other means of unlawful communication, unlawful information gathering, including blagging or so-called deception to get information, and the use of private investigators, so journalists can take that information that the investigators get and write intrusive stories about Prince Harry. That was the allegation, and the judge ruled that 15 out of the 33 articles in Prince Harry's case did in fact result from unlawful information gathering. Now, the judge said that Prince Harry's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent, but what the judge disagreed with Harry on was that every single article of the 33 resulted from phone hacking. But the judge did accept and concede that Prince Harry probably thought that was the case, because phone hacking was so widespread at Mirror Group Newspapers at the time. In fact, the judge said there was extensive phone hacking by Mirror Group newspaper journalists between the years 2006 and 2011, even to some extent during the Leveson inquiry. Now, that was the inquiry looking into media practices, including alleged phone hacking across all media in the United Kingdom around that time. But then we had Prince Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, come out and speak to journalists. He delivered a statement on behalf of Prince Harry. Just to summarise, he said, "This is a great day for truth and accountability." He said that the case reveals the shocking scale of systematic and appalling behaviour by journalists at Mirror Group Newspapers. He also said and reiterated what the judge said, that Piers Morgan clearly knew about phone hacking. Piers Morgan was a former editor of the Daily Mirror. He, in the past, has always denied allegations of wrongdoing. We do not have an updated statement from Piers Morgan at this time. David Sherborne, Prince Harry's lawyer, also said that Prince Harry's commitment is based on the need for a free and honest press. He also called on the Metropolitan Police and prosecuting authorities to investigate, bringing charges against the company and those who broke the law. Now, Mirror Group Newspapers, in response, has apologised unreservedly for historical wrongdoing. But Prince Harry's fight against the British press is far from over. Yes, he's won against Mirror Group Newspapers, but he has two separate law cases, court cases going through the High Courts against Associated Newspapers and News Group Newspapers, both of which deny the allegations, and we're expecting trials for them in the new year.
Cameron, what do you think Prince Harry means when he says the mission continues? That's in the statement that was read out by David Sherborne, his lawyer. The mission continues. What do you think he'd like to see in terms of a free and honest press?
Well, let's look at the backhand to Prince Harry, first of all. I mean, very tragically, his mother, Princess Diana, died in a car crash in 1997. The driver was drunk. They weren't wearing seatbelts, but they were being chased by paparazzi. And since then, Prince Harry really has had a hatred, I suppose, to certain fractions of the press. As he grew up, when he was a teenager and in his early 20s, thousands of articles were written by British tabloid journalists about his private life. Of course, not all of them were written with information obtained through unlawful means, but some, as we have seen in the judgment today, were obtained from unlawful information gathering. And Prince Harry spoke of, both in court back in June and in his witness statements, that he experienced paranoia and depression, and the fact that he felt he couldn't trust anyone because he was trying to figure out how on earth it was that this private information, which he had only told to a select group of close friends and family members, had ended up in the public domain. And the judges ruled that in 15 of those cases, articles, unlawful information was, the information was obtained unlawfully, either through hacking Prince Harry's phone or those phones close to Prince Harry, as in perhaps his former girlfriend Chelsea Davy or courtiers, etc., or other means such as hiring private investigators or blagging to get that information. So he's very much continuing that mission against the British press to change the culture of British media.
A big goal there. Thank you very much indeed, Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent there.
Well, let's get more now with the royal commentator Judita Da Silva. And thank you so much for joining us, Judita. It does seem that there have been a lot of cases that Harry has involved himself with. There are more that are ongoing. Some, in the eyes of the average British observer, might seem egregious, his desire to have the British taxpayer pay for his security and all the rest of it. But I suppose this case today has been pretty clear-cut.
I mean, definitely. And also it speaks to a validation about what he's been talking about when it comes to the practices of the press, particularly towards him and his family. Because at the end of the day, in the court of law, they only deal with facts, not with conjecture or opinion. And so it's an important thing that the reason why he'll have so many cases is because it's a practice across the press, so certain types of press. So to single out one paper here or one paper there would make it look petty and vindictive, and it's something personal. He's trying to send a message that it's a universal practice and a universal operation standard that needs to change, that needs to shift, that needs to be policed better. And having it begin with this victory will kind of send a message to the rest of the papers that the relentlessness of Harry that some condemn is actually something that should be lauded, because when you rage against the machine, when you go up against an institution that is so big, it is possible that the voice of one and the tenacity of one can speak to truth and end up with a victory that speaks to justice.
Judita, I think there's a difficulty because, of course, when it comes to unlawful information gathering, that is wrong, and it is right that Harry has shone a light on this and won damages to that effect. But sometimes we get the feeling in this country that Prince Harry simply doesn't like anything negative being written about him or his wife. So there's a sort of... I'm very sympathetic with the case, and I think a lot of British people will be, because phone hacking simply is not right, and it's something that we don't want to see in a free and honest press. Prince Harry is absolutely right about that. But has he also got a bit of a thin skin simply when it comes to criticism?
I think when you are famous on the level that the British royal family is famous, and when you know you operate at the mercy of public opinion, negative things really do ricochet and reverberate within the halls of the firm when he was part of it, and even more so now. So to put that just on Harry isn't fair. All celebrities, all people in the public eye know that it doesn't matter how many nice things people say, it's the negative comments that really get at you. But now he's also operating in a situation where managing his brand, managing opinion is really important to his sustainability in the business he is doing. So it's a business module. So it's not something just he does. They all do it. But to the point that you made, yes, he does tend to have a thin skin when negative things are said, or most people do. But it's something he's going to have to increasingly learn how to navigate, because they will never go away. It's par for the course when you are famous on the level that he is, and you no longer have the protection of the firm.
Yes, and of course there is that ongoing criticism that he's quite happy to reveal private details from his own life and also the life of the royal family at the same time. So it's very much a mixed picture. Yes. But certainly this is a win for him today. Thank you very much, Judita Da Silva, royal commentator. Interesting.
Yes, well, coming up, our Home and Security Editor joins us for the very latest on the tragic death in the Channel overnight. One person remains in a very critical condition. More on that shortly.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion.
Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 1. Now, one person has died overnight after trying to cross the English Channel.
The French Coast Guard was alerted to a boat carrying migrants 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk. They were able to rescue 66 people as the boat began to sink.
One other migrant remains in a critical condition. But for more on this now is our very own Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, these are always tragic incidents, but I suppose to some extent are inevitable when you have large numbers coming across in rickety boats.
Yeah, especially when you get to this time of year, because the weather windows are far fewer than they are during the summer, when you get periods of flat, calm conditions that can last a week or more. Plenty of opportunity for these small boats to cross. In the winter, though, you get a run of bad weather. In fact, we haven't had any boat crossings for more than a week now. And then today, where it's just about passable, the small boats take to the water, and that's what happened. But I say just about passable. The conditions are still pretty awful out there, with significant swells and 12-knot winds from the northwest. Just in the last 10 minutes or so, some migrants have arrived at Dover. They were taken off by the Border Force vessel Hurricane there. Another Border Force vessel, Ranger, is picking up another group of migrants. So we believe that 4 small boats have come across, in addition to that boat that got into difficulties in the early hours of this morning. And we're learning that the person who died is a woman. We don't know the sex of the person who was flown to hospital in Calais, but they are described as critically ill at this time. Now, James Cleverly The Home Secretary has been responding to this. He said that it highlights the horrific brutality of the people smugglers. Labour's Annalise Dodds has been speaking as well. She says that the government needs to do much more to go after those people smugglers.
It does have a different approach, and above all, it's focused on breaking up those criminal gangs. So we would be making sure that we had a joint elite police unit that was focused on these criminal gangs, that was actually prosecuting the individuals, because we've seen the rate of prosecutions of criminal people smugglers actually going down over recent years. We need to have a focus on that. We need to be processing claims.
Now, our parliamentarians all agree that these crossings must be stopped, not least because they're so dangerous, as this incident has highlighted. So much disagreement about how you do that, though.
Yes, and obviously Rwanda is the one big issue that the two big parties have completely opposing viewpoints on. Clearly, the Conservatives see this as a very significant proposal that, if it was actually to come to fruition, they believe would act as a disincentive that would help break the people smugglers model. Labour does not believe that at all. You heard from Annalise Dodds there. Their focus would be on going after the people smugglers. I mean, to be fair to the government, the National Crime Agency, other law enforcement partners are doing just that. They are going after the people smugglers, but it's not easy to go after these criminal gangs that have grown in sophistication over recent years, that have well-sourced supplies for boats and other equipment they need to get across the channel, and who have a ready market of thousands of people, more than 29,500 so far this year, who want to cross, who are more than willing to pay £2,000 or £3,000 to get on these boats, despite the risks.
And after these sorts of incidents, do we see a reduction in the numbers crossing, or does it have very little impact at all?
None at all. I mean, people just factor the risk in to their journey, and yes, of course, it's a shock, I'm sure, for everyone that's in the camps in Calais and in Dunkirk when the information comes back about what's happened out in the Channel. But that doesn't put them off. I mean, these people have travelled, in many cases, thousands of miles. They will have already, in the majority of cases, crossed a bigger sea in terms of the Mediterranean to get to the mainland Europe and then up towards northern France. This is the very last leg. They realise there's always a risk in crowding on these inflatables in less than ideal weather conditions, but that's the last leg that they've come so far for, and it's not going to put them off. But sadly, as I say, when we get to this time of year, what happens out in the Channel is that with the swells, the waves, the winds pushing the boats back, that means that these often very flimsy vessels that are made to order in backstreet factories in China and then shipped to Turkey for onward transport up to the European Union, you know, they are not the most robust of vessels by any means. And when they hit these big swells, that can be enough just to sort of pull them apart at the seams there.
Really, really tragic scenes. Mark White, thank you so much for bringing us that detail, that information and that assessment too.
Now, earlier we were speaking about Rishi Sunak's A-levels replacement. That's in a bid to teach young people good financial decision-making. Well, a police initiative in Lancashire has seen children from Year 5 and 6 at a local primary school inducted as mini cadets.
Well, the goal is to build community relationships and give pupils skills for life. For the last 8 weeks, they've been working with different emergency services.
Our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper went along to see the mini cadets learning basic CPR and to find out what the initiative is all about.
Skills for life learned right at the start of theirs. For these Year 5 and 6 pupils turned mini cadets, they're gaining valuable knowledge whilst also getting the chance to work alongside our emergency services.
The idea is that we try and break down some of the barriers that are in the community where not everyone is in full support of the police. So we work with the children, we bring them out of school for an hour. We bring many other agencies out to work with them, the fire and rescue, Northwest Ambulance, and we try and show them that we are actually here to help and protect them.
We might go up to them and we're going to say, hello, can you hear me?
This session saw the cadets learn basic CPR from the Northwest Ambulance Service. This is just one of many activities across the 8-week course.
Tell me what your favourite thing is you've learned so far during the cadets.
When we saw the fire engine and we got to spray water. Probably everything. Fire engine, because we got to explore what the stuff was and we got to use the hose and it was really fun.
Probably this session because I just it helps me to realise that know how to do CPR now, so if I can see anybody having problems, I can just help them.
The sessions focus on getting the cadets out of the classroom and giving them some real hands-on experience. But that doesn't mean their everyday lessons have been forgotten.
They're still doing all the maths and the English and they have to do, but in what the activities that they're doing, they're bringing in science, they're bringing in history, they're bringing in geography, they're bringing in thinking skills, problem-solving skills, team-working skills, and most importantly, it's giving these children who are involved a bigger self-esteem, it's growing that, it's growing their self-confidence. So it's actually enhanced the curriculum, not stopped the curriculum.
For the pupils, they get a fun whilst also educational experience. But this scheme also helps to build relationships between Lancashire Police and their local community.
Well, there's several strands to it. One is just the outreach to our local community in terms of our neighbourhood policing teams getting into local schools. It's good for recruitment, even at that age, that it sows the seed that maybe going into the local constabulary isn't a thing to strive for in young people.
Whether or not the cadets go on to join the emergency services, the skills they're gaining are definitely something worth shouting about. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Well, there we go. We know who to call in an emergency.
The mini cadets.
Well, coming up, Stella Creasy causes a backlash with a tweet about motherhood. More on that after your headlines with Lisa.
It's just after 1:30. I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB newsroom. Specialist divers searching for missing mother of 3 in Norwich have found a body in the River Wensum. Gaynor Lord went missing after leaving work in Norwich city centre last Friday. Norfolk police say while the body hasn't formally been identified, Gaynor's family have been informed. They continue to be supported by specially trained officers. Prince Harry says it's a great day for truth and accountability after being awarded more than £140,000 in damages over phone hacking claims against a tabloid newspaper group. The High Court ruled there was extensive phone hacking by the Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011. The judge also said the Duke of Sussex's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent. In response, the publisher says they apologise unreservedly where historical wrongdoing took place. The Home Secretary says the government must and will do more after one person died and another was left in a critical condition in the English Channel. A boat carrying migrants sank about 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk overnight. More than 60 people were rescued. James Cleverly described the incident as a horrific reminder of the people smugglers' brutality. UK police are working with French authorities to bring back a British schoolboy who went missing 6 years ago. Alex Batty, who is now 17, went missing in 2017 after going on a family holiday to Spain. Detectives believe he was abducted by his mother to live an alternative lifestyle abroad. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
For a valuable legacy your family can own, gold coins will always shine bright. Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2750 and 1.1651 euros. The price of gold is £1,601.58 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,600 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist. And you survived? I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like? I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three. Oh!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order. Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. An update for you on this press conference we're expecting from Norwich Police. We were expecting it at 2 o'clock. We're now expecting it at 2:30 to clear up some of the mysteries around the last 7 days and the disappearance of Gaynor Lord.
Yes, but now let's talk about how the terrorist organisation Hamas, its plot to attack Jews across Europe, there are fears growing that Middle East war is increasing the global threat. So joining us now to discuss this is the director of the Common Sense Society, Emma Webb, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Now, Emma, you've done a lot of research into Islamism, extremism, terrorism, the threats that we face. We now understand that a big plot has been foiled on the continent, in Europe, by Germany, the Netherlands, and so on. How concerned should we be about this threat coming to Britain, or is it already here?
I think we should be very concerned. This shows that there is a shift in the tactics of Hamas into a model more like, say, Hezbollah or ISIS. So, yes, none of these attacks were focused here in the UK. But the fact that they were planning these attacks in Europe suggests a change that could affect Jewish people here and in Britain. I think people have a very short memory. It's not really that long since we saw attacks taking place in multiple countries in Belgium and in France, and the ability of those ISIS networks to move from one country to the other and to do multiple attacks like that. And like I say, it's not dissimilar from other terrorist groups. We were hearing only a couple of months ago about concerns to do with Iranian-sponsored terrorism and Hezbollah in Europe as well. So this is enormously concerning, not least because we've seen people marching in our streets, calling for jihad, talking about Muslim armies, and other insightful rhetoric as part of these marches. I think that we should be very concerned, and the Jewish community, of course, will be very concerned about this. We've seen all sorts of incidents like Hanukkah candles in the last couple of days being vandalised and knocked over in various parts of London. So this is extremely concerning. It should be taken very seriously. And actually, I think that the public discussion around this has frankly been quite naive.
It's interesting that there were 4 arrests with regard to this specific plot to kill Jews across Europe. 3 more arrests, too, of people assumed to be Hamas terrorists for more general terrorism offences, suspected offences and plotting. Amy, what can we do to better protect ourselves? Because evidently these individuals have been discovered. There will be more than 7 people across Europe who are thinking of doing this stuff.
Yeah, of course, and I think it is a real threat, and it is something that we need to, our national security, of course, needs to stay on top of. But I think that at risk of being accused of terrorist sympathy, we need to look at the scenes coming out of Gaza, the methodology of the IDF, and perhaps try and understand why the threat might have heightened since the fallout from October the 7th, and perhaps realise that a military solution is not going to be possible, and look at the situation within Palestine and what has happened in Gaza. We're at a point now, I think 1% of the population has died, half of which were children. I don't think you can bomb your way to peace.
But regardless of any Middle Eastern conflict going on, we still have this terror threat. It hasn't suddenly sprung up since the most recent conflict in Israel and Gaza, has it, Emma?
Well, it's about being clear-sighted, isn't it? Because Hamas, very clearly, you only have to look at their charter, they are an Islamofascist organisation. They are a prescribed anti-Semitic terrorist group. And the fact that we've talked in other contexts about how international conflicts play themselves out on British streets because of the diversity in our population, people who have connections abroad. But this is a conflict between Israel and Hamas. And what we are seeing in Western countries is attacks on Jews who are not Israeli citizens. These are purely anti-Semitic, and this is a terrorist organisation that is not only inciting but also organising terror attacks against Jewish people. And you have to remember that when these attacks happen, or even when a plot is foiled, this often leads to inspiration to either lone wolves or other people in Western countries to either commit acts of terrorism or other acts of violence against, say, the Jewish community. And this is, if this were any other group, if this were a white nationalist terrorist organisation that controlled territory somewhere in the world, encouraging and organising acts of violence and terrorism against Jewish populations in Europe, there would be far more outrage. I think it says something about the moral depravity and the sort of way in which we've become sort of ethically unmoored as a culture, that we are not clear-sighted about what this threat actually is.
Just finally on this, Amy, you say you can't bomb your way to peace. Isn't that sort of exactly what we did when we defeated the last big anti-Semitic threat on continental Europe between 1939 and 1945?
Well, I don't think that's a comparison you can really make, because that was two nations. There was a German army. The occupied areas of the West Bank and Palestine don't have an army. This is indiscriminate, disproportionate killing of civilians, targeting schools.
Well, the IDF would say that it's not indiscriminate.
Camps, using white phosphorus. This is something that surely we cannot be considered palatable by the international community. It's a clear breaking of international law. And I don't think it's comparable. If you look at the free democracy involved in World War II, and then the occupied state of Palestine, of Gaza, the living conditions within Gaza before October the 7th. I mean, just 5 miles from the Nova Music Festival, people were living with a literal cage round the periphery of the area.
I mean, Amy, Israel would say, defence forces and the government, I'm sure, would say that they're facing an existential threat on their borders, and not just from Gaza, not just from Hamas, but from other terror groups who would like nothing more than to see Israel completely wiped off the map. So this is existential for them. And they'd also deny that it's indiscriminate bombing. They'd say that they're targeting Hamas, and that Hamas, unfortunately, is embedded within the civilian population. However, I can certainly see, when we see how many people are dying, although we don't know the exact figures, of course, at the moment, I can see how obviously that may radicalise people, not only in Gaza, but also over here in Europe. But just one last thing, Amy, do you worry that perhaps we're getting to a stage where we're almost normalising anti-Semitism? It's become normal. We've seen Hanukkah tributes, I don't know what you want to call them.
Menorahs.
Menorahs, that is the actual word, yes. Menorahs in public spaces being destroyed, vandalised.
What we all need to be very, very careful to do is not to conflate a criticism of the IDF and the methodology of Israel with Jews, most of whom, I mean, Jews living in London, most of whom haven't even been to Israel. But on the side when you bring up the side of an existential threat, I think that this is why probably only 2% of people think there will be a solution to this situation, because you have extremism on both sides. You have extremism with the aims of Hamas, but equally you have extremism on the aims of the Israeli government. And Netanyahu has made it clear that it's an existential threat on their side as well. So I think that's why this is going to... there needs to be some sort of middle ground, because at the moment it's two extremes with existential intentions on both sides, and that's the issue.
Well, shall we have a bit of a gear change now to something that's caused a huge amount of consternation online? A tweet from the Labour MP, the prominent Labour MP, Stella Creasy, has been criticising the so-called motherhood penalty, saying that she hasn't been able to go to Christmas parties. Here's the tweet on screen. As I walk past everyone going to Christmas parties and drinks on my way to get kids from nursery, yet again acutely aware the motherhood penalty is just a gift that keeps on giving. Not just flexible working, we need flexible networking too. Emma, doesn't she have a point? Doesn't she have a point? Mothers do have this sort of penalty, I suppose. They can't go out as much. With people with young children, can't go to as many parties.
I think this is really sad, actually. And imagine being her children growing up and reading the wording of that tweet. And now putting me up against Amy on this is not really fair, because Amy has a child and I feel
the squeeze of the motherhood penalty every day.
But I would, and I think, you know, Olivia Utley, GBNews' very own Olivia Utley, put out a very, very good, incisive tweet on this, which is that there are many women who would want to stay at home with their children, spend time with their children, if they could have children, rather than going out to these Christmas parties. I think she made a very good point. I think this is really sad. I don't think it's good or healthy to think of these things in terms of a motherhood penalty. In life, everything is a compromise, and children are invaluable, whereas, you know, going to a Christmas party and networking, and what person in their right mind would prefer that to staying
Now, I
with
think
their
your
children?
instinct is going to be to defend Stella Creasy, because she has been a feminist voice in Parliament, sometimes a little bit bizarre, some of the things she comes out with, but surely you don't see it as a penalty that you'd have to look after your kid instead of going to a network Christmas party.
But I do think that she was bringing up something very real. That is the motherhood penalty. We have one of the highest rates of childcare across Europe. It shrinks the workforce. 1 in 10 women leave because of childcare costs. So I think we need to encourage. We've got a falling birth rate, right? We need to encourage women to be able to have children and become mothers without having to lose out on anything, because otherwise we're going to put off more.
This is where I think it's just gone bonk. Like, the internet just exploded in a very bonkers way. Perhaps it was crass to use the term motherhood penalty, but that's what everyone's got angry about. The point of the tweet was a pro-motherhood one, was it not?
No, it wasn't.
I think that this whole narrative, the way that this is the sort of like hue of this narrative, is one of the things that discourages women from having children. Because to talk about it as a motherhood penalty makes it sound like it's some kind of...
But isn't that just describing the reality?
You're giving up something but gaining so much more, right?
No, but you shouldn't have. Why should you have to give up?
Let me just finish
very
my point
important
briefly.
things to become a mother.
Because I think that to make it out like it's some kind of zero-sum game is wrong. To talk about it as if it's a penalty. In life, everything is a compromise. To raise children properly requires that you divert some of your attention from one thing into another thing. Both parents have to do that in different ways, depending on their arrangements. To talk about it as if it's a penalty that is something that can be fixed somehow by some external power, whether it's the government or whatever, isn't the right way of looking at it. Instead, what we should be doing is trying to find a way in which those women who say stay at home with their children rather than going to Christmas parties don't feel that they're devalued because they're not part of they're not contributing to the economy in
But is there not a fundamental problem here? That there are some mothers who can very well afford to go to the Christmas party because they'll get the nanny or the au pair or whatever to look after the kids.
What about the dad?
Or the dad or whatever. And then there are some families who simply can't afford that. And it might mean they don't have more children or they don't have as many children as they would like to have, or it might mean that they think of this as a future problem and won't have children in the first place. Should we not be finding
a lot of mothers who would prefer to look after their child than hand it to childcare?
Sure, but shouldn't every mother have the choice?
It's the idea that that's a penalty. The use of the word penalty to describe having to compromise on something just sounds so negative to me, though, Amy.
Yeah, but I think the things that are blocking mothers out, lack of flexible working, squeezing talent out of the market, the fact that so many women are leaving industry, it is a negative. It is a negative thing that we need to discuss and that we need to remedy so that we can keep mothers in the workforce.
Do you think that for most women, they want to continue working as they were prior to having a child in the same capacity, the same hours, the same days, or is that part of the equation that once you have a child, for a lot of women, they actually don't value their career as much? Some women, obviously not all.
Yeah, obviously not all, but I think it should be open to women to be able to not be penalised for choosing to have children. We should be encouraging women to have children so that we wouldn't see things like the falling birth rate that we're seeing at the moment. I think a lot of people want to have children, but they just can't because of the costs involved.
I just think it's obvious that when you have a child, you're going to have to give up something.
But I think we're talking in too absolutist terms here, though, because Stella Creasy's tweet was talking about flexible motherhood. Yes, sometimes staying at home, but having that option, maybe one night a week to go out and drink with your colleagues, that's OK.
We're demonising compromise. Like, we need to live in the real world. If you have children, it's the same with anything. If you take on lots of different commitments, you have to make compromises between them. That's just life. So to talk about it in negative terms as if it's some kind of penalty that's being exposed, but is being imposed.
I think
we are running out of time, but just finally, I think I should just say I was at a Christmas party with Stella Creasy on Thursday, so perhaps it's not as absolute. More after this.
She's just greedy.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. We'll stay cloudy and rather mild for many of us through the rest of the day, but overnight it does turn windier across the north as well as wetter too. That's because we've got this string of weather fronts out in the Atlantic. They'll continue to stream in wet weather across northern areas of the UK, particularly across for the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it will stay dry through the rest of the evening. We'll see some clear spells in the south and east, so it will feel a little bit cooler here, but elsewhere we've got a strong breeze and a southerly breeze and very mild air for the time of year. So it will be an exceptionally mild night tonight, with temperatures not dipping much below 10 or 11 degrees for parts of Scotland. However, it will stay quite wet and windy across parts of Scotland throughout Saturday, and into the afternoon the rain will become quite heavy and persistent. Further south, though, it will stay dry once again through much of the day, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around. However, it's still staying very mild through Saturday and through much of the weekend as well, with highs of around 12 to 13 degrees across the UK, which is quite high for this time of year. However, the persistent rain across Scotland will continue through Saturday night and won't relent all the way through Sunday as well. So we do have an amber rain warning in force for parts of the Highlands and into the Argyll as well. A yellow warning as well more widely. That rain will sink southwards into Monday and Tuesday to more southern areas of the UK, allowing cooler air to arrive in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Friday, the 15th of December. Coming up today.
The search for Gaynor Lord. In the last hour, Norfolk police have confirmed that specialist divers have recovered a body in the River Wensum. Although the body has not been formally identified, Mrs. Lord's family have been informed. A press conference by Norfolk police is due to start in half an hour.
Victory for the Prince. A High Court judge has ruled that Prince Harry was probably hacked to a modest extent by Mirror Group newspapers. The Duke will be awarded over £140,000 in damages, and he's called it a great day for truth, as well as accountability.
Hamas threat revealed. A Hamas plot to kill Jews in Europe has been foiled by German and Danish police. 7 terrorists have been arrested across multiple European countries. Are we at risk here at home?
And as we were saying, it's less than half an hour now until that police press conference from Norfolk Police, from Norwich Police, with regard to finding out what has happened in this mysterious missing persons case of Gaynor Lord.
Yes, what we know is that a body has been recovered from the River Wensum, and it has not formally been identified. We don't know if perhaps we will have an identification at this press conference, but we'll wait to hear from the police to see what the latest is in their investigation of this missing 55-year-old woman, Gaynor Lord.
And there are so many questions to be answered. Why was she running through town? Why was she spotted doing yoga? And if indeed the body in the water is identified as Gaynor Lord, which we do not know yet, how did it get in the water?
Yes, so less than half an hour till that press conference. We'll bring it to you at that time. But first, let's get the headlines with Lisa.
Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 2. I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB newsroom. Specialist divers searching for missing mother of 3 in Norwich have found a body in the River Wensum. Gaynor Lord went missing after leaving work in Norwich city centre last Friday. Norfolk police say while the body hasn't formally been identified, Gaynor's family have been informed. They continue to be supported by specially trained officers. Prince Harry says it's a great day for truth and accountability after being awarded more than £140,000 in damages over phone hacking claims against a tabloid newspaper group. The High Court ruled there was extensive phone hacking by the Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011. The judge also said the Duke of Sussex's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent. In response, the publisher says they apologise unreservedly where historical wrongdoing took place. Prince Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, read out this statement earlier.
This case is not just about hacking. It is about a systemic practice of unlawful and appalling behaviour, followed by cover-ups and destruction of evidence, the shocking scale of which can only be revealed through these proceedings. The court has found that Mirror Group's principal board directors, their legal department, senior executives and editors such as Piers Morgan clearly knew about or were involved in these illegal activities.
The Home Secretary says the government must and will do more after one person died and another was left in a critical condition in the English Channel. A boat carrying migrants sank about 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk overnight. More than 60 people were rescued. James Cleverly described the incident as a horrific reminder of the people smugglers' brutality. But Chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds, says the government is not doing enough to stop criminal gangs.
Labour wouldn't be spending that money on Rwanda. It's eye-wateringly expensive. £400 million, it appears, is going to be spent on that scheme, and yet it would only cover about 1% of people who are arriving in the UK. Labour does have a different approach, and above all, it's focused on breaking up those criminal gangs.
UK police are working with French authorities to bring back a British schoolboy who went missing 6 years ago. Alex Batty, who is now 17, went missing in 2017 after going on a family holiday to Spain. Detectives believe he was abducted by his mother to live an alternative lifestyle abroad. Assistant Chief Constable from Greater Manchester Police, Chris Sykes, gave this update earlier, a warning this contains flashing images.
Our main priority now is to see Alex returned home to his family in the UK, and our investigation team are working around the clock with partner agencies and the French authorities to ensure they are all fully supported. Alex and his family remain our focus, and we still have some work to do in establishing the full circumstances surrounding his disappearance and where he has been in all those years.
Relatives of 2 people killed at a London music venue have renewed their appeal for information 1 year on from a fatal crush. 23-year-old security guard Gabby Hutchinson and 33-year-old Rebecca IQ Mello were killed when fans without tickets tried to force their way into the Brixton Academy last year. The Met has recently released CCTV images of people they wish to speak to about the incident and confirmed that 1 arrest had been made. The parents of Rebecca say they want justice.
We don't know what happened to her. We don't know how she died. And we're still waiting for information as to how this happened. And I mean, the most important thing is we don't want this to happen to another family.
NatWest Group says there's no evidence of discrimination due to political views in Coutts' decision to close customer accounts. The banking group says lawyers analysed 84 account closures from the 2 years before the review was commissioned. But NatWest admits lessons need to be learned. It's after Nigel Farage said his Coutts bank account was shut down because the bank disagreed with his political beliefs. And some breaking news. The actor Steve Halliwell, best known for playing Zack Dingle on Emmerdale, has died aged 77. The actor made his first appearance on the soap in October 1994. Halliwell's family said in a statement he was making us laugh to the end and died peacefully with his loved ones around him. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to the programme.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, Norfolk Police confirm specialist divers searching for Gaynor Lord have found a body in the River Wensum.
They're yet to formally identify the body, but her family have been notified. Our national reporter Theo Jakomba is on the scene for us now. Theo, as it stands, are we expecting this press conference to take place in about 20 minutes or so?
Yes, that's right. So we're on the location. So just to my left, everyone is set up here waiting for that press conference to take place around 2:30. So we're expecting to hear from Chief Superintendent Dave Buckley, who was here yesterday to provide the latest update. But what we do know today is that the police have found a body, although they haven't formally identified whose body it is. They have informed Gaynor Lord's family following finding that body. Now, this investigation has been going on here at Wensum Park. We're just in the north of Wensum Park in the river just behind me. They've been extensively working in this area, but they moved about 200 meters, I should say, in this direction, and that is where they found the body this morning. Those specialist officers who've been working alongside Norfolk Police and Lincolnshire Police as well. But this afternoon, we are expecting to hear from the police.
And what are we expecting the police to say, Theo? Because there are so many unsolved mysteries. There are so many loose ends to this story, so many points of mystery. Why was she running? Why was she spotted doing yoga? And indeed, if it is the body, sadly, of Gaynor Lord that has been found, how did it get into the water? These are questions that are going to be on the lips of everyone watching.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, the length of how long the investigation took. All of these questions and more. Many people who were watching and have been following closely what what they've been doing in the last couple of days. There is someone from the police just now giving an update, perhaps clarifying what we'll be hearing this afternoon, but all eyes will be on that press conference to find out what more details they can provide.
Well, Theo, we'll let you get to the scene and listen to what those police officers are saying, and we'll be back with you a little bit later this hour.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Theo. Now, one person has died overnight after trying to cross the channel.
The French Coast Guard was alerted to a boat carrying migrants 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk. They were able to rescue 66 people as the boat began to sink.
One other migrant remains in a critical condition, as we understand. But joining us now is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark. Mark, what can you tell us about this incident?
Yeah, it was about 12:30 this morning when the French authorities got word that this migrant boat had got into difficulties about 5 miles off Dunkirk, the beach at Gravelines there. And they dispatched a number of their vessels to the scene, 5 in total, along with the UK Coast Guard helicopter, which also assisted. And what they found when they arrived there was that the migrant boat, of course, these migrant boats are made up of, 2 massive inner tubes effectively down each side of the boat. One side of the boat, that inner tube which the migrants sit on, had completely deflated, and that sent dozens of them into the freezing pitch black waters of the channel overnight. And then that rescue operation swung into operation in earnest, within the hour all 66 people, they believe, who were on that boat taken onto the rescue craft. One woman who was unconscious was worked on by paramedics as they tried to resuscitate her. They were unable to do that, and she was declared dead. And then another migrant, we don't know if that's a man or a woman, was also taken unconscious to a hospital in Calais. They're still described as being critically ill at this hour. The search continued for some time afterwards because, as always with these migrant boats, they never know exactly how many would be on board. And, as staggering as it sounds, we've seen migrant boats with more than 66 people on board. And at night, clearly in the dark, if people were in the water, it's certainly possible that they've been swept away and have been lost. So that search will continue. Not as intense, but assets that are in the area are keeping an eye out.
Absolutely tragic whenever something like this happens. What sort of scale would we be thinking of, this sort of boat where more than 66 migrants, as far as we understand it, were in a single boat? How common is that?
Sadly, it's very common now. The numbers have been creeping ever upwards, Tom, in terms of the people smugglers, the boats that they're now having designed and built to order in backstreet factories in China. They were quite a bit smaller for a number of years than they are now. Now they're over 11 metres at least in length, and they can get up to 80 people, sometimes more, on these boats. Now, clearly, because they're not the most robust of designs, you put a very significant number of people on them, sitting on these inner tubes down either side of these boats. And then you combine that with the swells, the weather conditions that you get at this time of the year, even though the weather might improve to the point where you can just about put a boat out and across the channel. When it hits those waves with so many people on board, that can often be the trigger for these seams that just simply rupture and then it deflates and all these people are just cast into the water.
Mark, the people smugglers in charge of this operation, clearly they're trying to maximise their profits by packing more and more people onto these boats, which makes it even more dangerous than it would be otherwise. Where are the people smugglers actually from? What countries are they from? And where do they live while they're conducting these operations?
Well, many of them live here in the UK. We were speaking to someone just a couple of weeks ago who has intimate knowledge of the people smuggling operations in northern France. It's controlled the vast majority of it in northern France by Iraqi Kurds. And many of them are actually based in the UK. They have others, associates out in the camps in northern France. Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
The Largy, I'm afraid. So they have the people out there, and they have associates all the way back up the chain to Iraq itself or Iran or wherever these people are being smuggled from, right through to the camps of Northern Europe, Northern France, with a view to getting across the border. There have been some instances where Albanians have tried to muscle in on some of the people smuggling operations. That didn't really come off for the Albanians, so it's gone back really to majority Kurdish people smuggling gangs, although we're told that there are Eritrean groups that are trying to now muscle in on some of the action there as well, but they really lack the resources and the sophistication that the Kurdish people smuggling gangs have. They've had years to build up their experience, to get their supply models in place. As I say, these backstreet factories in China design and make the boats. They send them to Turkey, then they're shipped by road in cars or vans, up usually to Germany, where they're stored in garages or buildings. And then the day that they're about to be put into the water to come across the English Channel, they're shipped to northern France, about a 5-hour journey, and they're constructed on the beaches there very quickly, and then they're into the water. And of course, it's potentially a 100-mile stretch of coastline that the French police have to try to guard. They can be in a number of places, but not all places all of the time. And that's why, even though some boats are clearly stopped by the French, the vast majority still manage to get through.
Well, Mark, thank you for giving us the information around this really tragic incident. Thanks for joining us.
Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, of course. Interesting to hear that based in the UK.
Yes.
A lot of these people smugglers.
But also 80 people. 80 people on a single, small, rickety rubber boat. It's an astonishing thing to think of.
It sounds like they're not so much dinghies in what we'd imagine a dinghy. These are reinforced. We've learned that these boats are now being reinforced in a way that they weren't before. They're now much larger, but of course they're completely over capacity.
Yes.
Massively
but
over
very,
capacity.
very long, sort of stitched together. No wonder these things break apart without a single sense of care for those that construct them.
And when we see these horrors in the Channel, it always, of course, highlights the problem, naturally, but also so many different ideas from our politicians and, of course, the rest of us on how you actually solve this issue. Nobody wants these boats to be coming across in this way. Absolutely perilous.
Well, in other news, German and Danish police have successfully foiled a Hamas plot to kill Jews in Europe, with the Danish Prime Minister describing the plot as being as serious as it gets.
Yes, in total, 7 suspected Hamas operatives were arrested across Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands. Some are warning that Hamas's decision to no longer confine itself to attacking Jews only in Israel is a worrying sign.
Well, what could it mean for us here in the UK? Let's speak to GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, these are individuals who've been arrested on the continent, but it's clear that the Hamas ideology is spreading beyond the confines of Israel.
Yeah, that's right. And this morning I spoke to security experts who warned that the UK is at a heightened risk due to what has been going on throughout the Middle East and indeed Europe since October the 7th, when that conflict in Israel and the Palestinian territories really kicked off. And we do know that just 2 weeks ago, a senior Hamas official called on supporters throughout Europe to tackle British interests, to target areas and indeed individuals aligned with the British state and the United Kingdom in general. There's no immediate suggestion, however, though, that last night's arrests have any British link, but this does suggest a significant shift in the tactics and procedures and indeed targeting methods of Hamas, because they have not typically operated outside of Israel, Gaza and the West Bank. So to be directing operations into Germany and the Netherlands and possibly even Denmark is a significant step forward. You can bet that in the security agencies across Europe and indeed throughout the United Kingdom this morning, that would have been the vital intelligence they briefed on. Vital intelligence is typically a threat to life or a shift in the pattern of behaviour of a terrorist organisation. And this is a suggestion that that has now happened. Hamas targeting people within Europe. Now, the German Interior Minister said that the protection of Jews is a top priority, and the plot was reportedly revolving around the moving of a weapons collection into Berlin to target Jews and Jewish institutions there. We don't know if the arrests in Denmark last night are linked to those in Germany, but it appears that a significant plot has been foiled by this police work and the European intelligence agencies there.
And Charlie, it's concerning here because, of course, we have seen vandalism of menorahs. We've seen vandalism of Jewish, threats to Jewish schools and synagogues and the like. It's, it's not that much of a stretch to think that perhaps there would be some kind of violent attack. Very hard for the security services to keep an eye on absolutely everyone who may have extremism, links to extremism or extremist views. A massive task.
Well, the security services are thought to monitor some 40,000 people, at least, the vast majority of which considered linked to Islamist extremism. And of that 40,000, of course, the state just does not have the ability to track every single member of that watch list, and so it has to prioritise according to threat, according to risk, and indeed other factors. Most of the time, they get it right, but sometimes, of course, they don't, and plots can slip through the cracks. Now, the reason why this significant plot appears to have been caught last night is because it involved several people organising across several countries, and it involved the moving of weapons. So a significant operation which will appear more obvious to the intelligence agencies on the continent. But what the security services in Britain are facing as a more significant issue is that threat of lone wolf attacks. Individuals radicalised in isolation, able to pick up a knife at home and strike at will whenever and wherever they want. We do know that the UK is stepping up its vigilance. Counter-terrorism police asking people to be especially vigilant over the Christmas period. And they did tell, security sources told GB News last month that an attack linked to the conflict in Gaza was more likely ever since October the 7th and the demonstrations we've seen in Britain. So very much a moment of heightened risk and tension in the security area this morning in Britain after news last night of 7 arrested on a Hamas-linked foiled terror plot.
And of course, those demonstrations you mention, one particular chilling chant that was recorded in them, from London to Gaza, we want an intifada. That would sound like this is an example of that sort of behaviour. Charlie Peters, thank you for bringing us the very latest concerning updates on that one.
Yes, but still to come. The Prince versus the press. Prince Harry has won 15 of the 33 articles in his lawsuit against the Mirror Group. We'll have analysis from our royal correspondent next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 27 minutes past 2 and just 3 minutes away now from that press conference we're expecting from Norwich Police, solving some of these mysteries around the disappearance of Gaynor Lord.
But first, let's get an update from our royal correspondent Cameron Walker on Prince Harry at the court. He's won 15 of 33 articles in his phone hacking lawsuit against Mirror Group. A good day for Prince Harry. Cameron, thank you very much. Can you bring us the latest on this? A vindication, perhaps, for Prince Harry? Cameron?
Oh, absolutely, Emily. That's a great word to describe it. This is certainly being seen as a victory for Prince Harry. Yes, it's only 15 articles that the judge has ruled in favour of Prince Harry in his case against Mirror Group newspapers. But what he has managed to do is prove in a court of law that Mirror Group newspaper journalists did use unlawful means to get information in order to write articles about both Prince Harry and other high-profile figures in this case. So we're talking about phone hacking here, blagging or so-called deception, and the use of private investigators to carry out unlawful information gathering as well. Now, all of these articles dates between the years 1991 and 2010. The judge ruled that Prince Harry's phone was personally targeted for phone hacking between the years 2003 and 2009. And he also said that there was extensive phone hacking at Mirror Group newspapers at all three of their publications, Daily Mirror, Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, between the years 2006 and 2011. And that is despite the fact that during this 7-week trial, which happened earlier this year, Mirror Group newspapers consistently denied that any phone hacking took place at their publications. The judge disagrees. This is hugely significant here and could have wider implications. Now, following the judge's ruling, Prince Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, stood outside the court to address journalists. He delivered a statement on behalf of Prince Harry. Just to summarise, Prince Harry said that this is a great day for truth and accountability. This case reveals the shocking scale of systematic and appalling behaviour. And he also made the point that the judge ruled that Piers Morgan, the former Daily Mirror editor, clearly knew about phone hacking. Now, Piers Morgan has always denied any knowledge of phone hacking and denies all the allegations made against him. Harry says that his commitment is based on a need for free and honest press. He also called on for the Metropolitan Police and other prosecuting authorities to investigate and bring charges against the company and those who broke the law. Now, Mirror Group Newspapers, in a statement, has apologised unreservedly for the historical wrongdoing. Prince Harry is going to be paid over £140,000 in damages. There were 3 other claimants in this case. 2 of those claims were dismissed for being brought too late. The other one is also being given some damages as well. But this is a very long road. Prince Harry sees it as his life's mission to change the way the British press operates, and this is certainly winning the battle, but not quite the war yet.
But of course, this isn't the only legal case that Prince Harry is bringing against the press, but also lots of other different entities too. This is the start of a very long legal road for the Prince. Will he be buoyed by today and perhaps go into these future cases with more gusto?
Yeah, long and expensive route for Prince Harry, but he became the first senior royal in 130 years to physically deliver evidence in court, Tom, as part of this Mirror Group newspaper trial. And it's clearly worked because he's partially won this case. He's got 2 trials to go with Associated Newspapers, that's publisher of the Daily Mail, and News Group Newspapers, that's publisher of The Sun and the now defunct News of the World, both of which he alleges unlawful information gathering, which the 2 publications deny. But he could well be back in a courtroom in London next year and the year after for those trials. So he clearly is determined to seek justice.
Cameron, you say that Prince Harry's mission is to change the British press, to make it more fair and honest, free and honest. But is there an argument that the press has changed since these articles were written and since these incidents of phone hacking and the like? The press has moved on since then. These are quite many years ago now.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that is the case. I mean, the articles alleged to be involved with unlawful information gathering date up till 2011, which is clearly more than a decade ago now. But I think what Prince Harry, from listening to him speak over the last few years, social media and the way news operates online is certainly a bigger challenge for him now in terms of negative press coverage and indeed trolling that goes along with it. In fact, the Archwell Foundation's report, his charity, said this year that he's really trying to tackle online trolls and social media trolling, which all spark from these negative articles written about him, which in theory perhaps does quite well for certain media publications. But in terms of the unlawful information gathering, I think that very much has changed, particularly with the Leveson inquiry, which found that it clearly was perhaps somewhat widespread at certain publications.
Yes, we know that Harry has spoken at length about social media and how negative it can be as an influence in his view. Thank you very much, Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent there, bringing us the latest on Prince Harry and his hacking case against the Mirror newspaper group.
Now, we're still waiting for this press conference in Norwich from Norfolk Police, and we'll bring you that as soon as it starts. But in the meantime, here are the headlines with Lisa.
It's just after 2:30. I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB newsroom. Oh, we're just hearing that the police are bringing us the latest on the missing mother, Gaynor Lord, so we'll just take you now there live.
OK, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. Today, police specialist divers have found the body of a female in the River Wensum after a detailed and methodical search over the past few days. Whilst we establish her identity, our thoughts are with Gaynor's family at this difficult and distressing time. We have specialist family liaison officers supporting the family and keeping them updated with what we are doing at all stages. We remain open-minded to the circumstances of Gaynor's disappearance and will continue to pursue all lines of inquiry to ascertain why she went missing. I'm keen to say that this remains a missing person inquiry at this stage. I'm also satisfied at the moment, based on the evidence that we have, that Gaynor did not meet anybody on the way to the park, and we now have a better understanding of her movements through the city centre. Whilst this is not the outcome we wished for, our search is always predominantly focused on the river and the park. We will now need to complete a post-mortem examination to establish means of death, but I would reiterate at this stage that there is no evidence of third-party involvement. Nothing in our inquiries have changed this position. I would like to thank the media and the public for their continued support during this difficult and challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So that was the update there on the missing mother of three, Gaynor Lord, who went missing after leaving work in Norwich city centre last Friday. So we'll bring you more on that as we get it. Now on to Prince Harry, who says that it's a great day for truth and accountability after being awarded more than £140,000 in damages over phone hacking claims against a tabloid newspaper group. The High Court ruled there was extensive phone hacking by the Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011. The judge also said the Duke of Sussex's phone was probably hacked to a modest extent. In response, the publisher says they apologise unreservedly where historical wrongdoing took place. The Home Secretary says the government must and will do more after one person died and another was left in a critical condition in the English Channel. A boat carrying migrants sank about 5 miles off the coast of Dunkirk overnight. More than 60 people were rescued. James Cleverly described the incident as a horrific reminder of the people smugglers' brutality. And some breaking news. The actor Steve Halliwell, best known for playing Zack Dingle on Emmerdale, has died aged 77. The actor made his first appearance on the soap in October 1994. Halliwell's family said in a statement he was making us laugh to the end and died peacefully with his loved ones around him. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, we have been digesting what was less of a press conference and more of a police statement from Chief Superintendent Dave Buckley, who is giving us more details around what is still quite a mysterious case, but some significant new news that we learnt in that police statement is that there has been no evidence of third-party involvement with the body that they have found in the water.
Which they confirmed was the body of a woman, and they also told us that they have police liaison officers with the family, essentially supporting them through this, which must be an awful position for her family and relatives. So we can confirm that Norfolk Police, the specialist... Oh, no, we can speak to Theo Jacomba now, who is on the scene for us, I believe. Theo will have been listening to that police statement. Theo, can you go over for us what we learned from that very short statement from the police officer there?
Yes, so it was a very, very quick statement. We were expecting perhaps a little bit more, but they didn't want to go into further detail at this moment. So we heard from Chief Superintendent Dave Buckley, who also heard from yesterday. And during that short statement a few moments ago, he said this remains a missing persons inquiry and that Gaynor did not meet anyone on the way to this area where we are in Wensum Park. And the focus has been on the river and the path on the way to this area. And he also said that the post-mortem is going to take place to establish the identification of the body that they have found. And then they also confirmed that there's no evidence of third-party involvement. And then he went on to thank the media and the public, of course, for their patience this week. Yesterday, he did confirm that 30 members of the public did contact the police with information as part of investigation, and throughout the week there have been appeals to members of the public to see if they have any dash cam footage, for example, or doorbell footage, which will help them as part of their inquiry. But as we mentioned earlier, there are still some questions about the CCTV footage that we have seen this week. How did she end up here, and what were her movements, particularly when she left work? That is still an ongoing investigation. There is also some questions about how she was feeling before she left work. Perhaps out of character is what has been described in the last few days. I think police have been speaking to her colleagues who worked at that department store in the heart of Norwich as well.
Thank you, Theo. Just very quickly, did Dave Buckley, the superintendent there, did he confirm that the body, while it has not been identified, was a body of a woman? Was that confirmed? I believe I heard that.
So yes, he did mention that, but again, it's not formally identified at this moment in time. So we can't say for sure at the moment who it is, and neither the police have confirmed that either.
Well, Theo Chikomba, thank you so much for bringing us the very latest there, and let's hope the police bring us some more statements in the coming days or even hours. But Theo Chikomba there, live from Norwich. Let's turn to our panel now. Still with us is the director of the Common Sense Society, Emma Webb, and the author and broadcaster, Amy Nicole-Turner. And Emma, this is the most curious case, a mysterious case, and clearly a very sad one too.
It's horribly sad, and I think everybody will be remembering Nicola Bulley. And I think I found it quite strange, actually, that this hasn't received more coverage, because obviously Nicola Bulley's case received a huge amount of coverage. There was a lot of interest in trying to find and trying to identify her. And in comparison, it's been actually rather quiet. I think this is extremely sad, and obviously the family, regardless of formal identification, will be suffering horrendously from this. So I think everybody who's been watching this and following it, their heart will really go out to the family who will be really suffering at this time.
The police have been careful with revealing much information about the missing woman in terms of her private life. Perhaps that's a learning from the Nicola Bulley case, where the police came under so much criticism for revealing intimate details of the woman.
Yeah, I think, this case is absolutely shrouded in mystery at the moment, but I think that's possibly a good thing when we remember that horrendous headline about Nicola Bulley's potential drinking habits being brought into the discussion way too prematurely for it even to be considered relevant in any way. So I think at the moment just so many questions are left open, aren't they? We've seen the CCTV footage of her running. What was she running for? We don't know. But hopefully her family can get some closure soon.
Well, I'm sure the police are investigating all leads, but shall we move on to something a little bit different? Now, this relates to the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. His home has been targeted by Just Stop Oil protesters. Of course, this is just months after Rishi Sunak's private home was scaled by the group, although I think that was Greenpeace, actually.
Yes.
The climate activists were eventually led away by police, where they read out this letter directed at the Labour leader. Let's have a look. Oh, we don't have it here for now, but shall we speak to Philip Davies, MP, who is a GB News contributor as well, of course. Philip, he'll be here in a minute. We'll talk to our panel first, of course. I'd like to know what you think about this. Keir Starmer, Just Stop Oil, outside his house, his own private home where his family live.
It reminds me of the stunt that they pulled at Rishi's house. Obviously, they didn't know...
No, that was Greenpeace.
That was Greenpeace.
That was Greenpeace.
All eco-warriors are the same to me.
Do you know what's quite funny, seeing some of these people? They say they're Extinction Rebellion one day of the week, Just Stop Oil the next day of the week, Animal Rebellion the next day. It's all the same people.
It's the same tactics. I think there's something distasteful about going to someone's home where their children live, where their family lives, who might not even necessarily share their politics. It's also peculiar because the Labour Party seems to be so close to Just Stop Oil in terms of their own policies. So I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to achieve by doing this, but most of the stunts that Just Stop Oil pull seem to be done more for their own sort of like frivolous enjoyment than actually having some kind of targeted purpose.
But I guess this does nicely put to bed the rumours that Just Stop Oil are writing Labour's green policy, which I think a lot of people were fairly convinced by for a while that there was some sort of influence there. But I thought
Singing them to
I thought that Labour were quite in step with Just Stop Oil in many ways, because of course they did have in their manifesto that they weren't going to issue any new oil and gas licences, which is pretty crucial to Just Stop Oil's whole mission statement.
Until I've spoken to a number of representatives from Just Stop Oil, and you realise Just Stop Oil is such a misnomer. It's not about just stopping oil. They also protest about Gaza. They also protest against nuclear energy. They also seem to protest against many of the things that perhaps would actually get us to net zero. They were protesting against COP recently because it's all too corporate. They hate carbon capture and storage because it thinks that it lets these energy companies off the hook. They hate so many things.
They're just irritating, Tom. That's all they are.
It boggles my mind.
But the question here, Amy, is this harassment? Turning up to a private home? Because
I think
it's scary.
It's in theory. It's carol singing, isn't it? Is carol singing harassment? No. It's just a nice seasonal activity. However, I do still find it interesting because I really thought that Keir Starmer was very clear about no new oil and gas licences and has been very critical of the government.
He's equivocated on it, Amy, but we're going to, just sorry to stop you there in your tracks, we'll come back to you, but we have got Philip Davies MP with us, GB News contributor as well. Philip, when you see footage of Keir Starmer's private home being targeted by Just Stop Oil activists, they had their little protest outside the front. How does that make you feel as an MP? Are you worried about safety?
Yeah, look, I think protesting outside people's homes is a step too far. I'm all for free speech. I'm all for people having the right to protest. They can go to an MP surgery. They can come to Parliament. They can make their views known in any which way. I think when you start protesting outside people's houses, because it's often just not the MP that lives there, it's their family members too. And it can be quite intimidating. And I don't really think that we should be getting into that. I should say that the media are not blameless in this either, because they often camp outside an MP's house where there's some interesting news going on too. And so maybe they could set a better example as well. But I think it's a step too far, and I feel sorry for Keir Starmer that this has happened. I feel sorry for Rishi Sunak when his home was invaded in the way it was, and I think there's better ways to protest than that.
Philip, would you not suggest that there's a difference between a journalist waiting outside the home of a politician to get a statement from that politician, not from their family or anyone else, but to get a statement from that politician, and the difference between sort of a mob of people turning up outside the home and being intimidating in that way? Is there not a difference in your view?
Not much difference. I think the media are often there as a mob too, to be perfectly honest. There's very rarely just one there. There's usually a mob, and that can be quite intimidating for the particularly for the family. I mean, it's not necessarily for the MP themselves. You get used to that, but for the family, they shouldn't have to feel intimidated or bullied for being able to leave their own home or things like that. That's an infringement on their freedoms. So no, I don't think there's a massive difference, and I think it's not. Look, I suppose it's inevitable it's going to happen, but it doesn't make it any better for the people affected.
It's interesting. Keir Starmer seems to be having a time of it at the moment. He had pro-Palestine protesters mobbing him on the street. That was on his trip to
Glasgow,
yes. And then when he was on a train, an individual came up to him and posed questions with a camera on him as well. And now his home has been targeted by Just Stop Oil protesters. I would say there wasn't any violence or anything like that. It was just.
But of course, he was attacked by glitter as well only several months ago.
They don't think he's left-wing enough, perhaps?
Well, I don't know. What does it say about Keir Starmer that suddenly more and more... Is it because people think he's going to be the next Prime Minister?
Yeah, it could well be. But look, most of these people are extremists, and no matter, you can never satisfy them. You can never be extreme enough for them in mainstream politics. However much you try and appease them, that you can't do it. And Keir Starmer will learn that pretty quickly, I guess. I mean, we've even got Just Stop Oil. I mean, the main funder of Just Stop Oil funds the Labour Party. So, I mean, if he can't appease them, he's got no chance of appeasing anybody else, to be honest.
Yeah, we don't want our politicians to be scared of the British public, do we?
No.
Thank you very much indeed, Philip Davies, Conservative MP and, of course, GB News contributor. Just reacting to what Philip said there about Just Stop Oil and their tactics. I do genuinely think that there are a lot of politicians who are scared.
Well, you saw what happened with Michael Gove walking through Waterloo Station when he was mobbed and chased by pro-Palestine protesters. Of course, we've seen Sir David Amess, Joe Cox. I think that's something that is, you know, probably in the forefront of a lot of MPs' minds, particularly if you think of when the pro-Palestine, obviously it's relevant not least because of the similarities in the way that these protests seem to be policed, but also because, as you mentioned, Tom, there is an overlap in terms of the personnel, that they were allowed by the police to stand directly on the pavement outside of Parliament, blocking MPs inside the building, which they're actually not allowed to do. And so I think MPs will be concerned by what seems to be a shift towards a more American style of protesting, which is much more aggressive, no sense of sort of propriety, boundaries, manners. It's not protesting in the sort of like proper democratic spirit of just voicing your view. It's about trying to bully people, even to the extent of causing criminal damage, whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's Extinction Rebellion damaging artworks or property. It's about intimidating people outside of the democratic process into doing what you want them to do.
However, I think... sorry to interrupt again, but in just a moment we're going to be crossing to Piers Morgan, actually, who will be responding to Prince Harry's phone hacking ruling. He was actually named in the statement by Prince Harry's lawyer. That's his door there we're looking at with a
Yes, we're expecting Piers Morgan to step out of that door any moment now, so we're just going to keep an eye on this and we'll obviously bring that statement as it happens. But come back to the issue of protest and is it becoming Americanised?
The only thing I wanted to add was I think that recently we've seen members of Just Stop Oil go to prison for up to 6 months, I think beyond that, even up to a year, for basically protesting and just blocking a road for a bit. So, in fact, I think are quite different, actually.
But if everyone did that...
There is no way those people should be in prison to have the rest of their lives impacted in that way. The sentences that have been handed down have been really disproportionate, and I think this is one of the reasons that they went outside Keir Starmer's house to make people more aware of some of the consequences that they're suffering.
I think we've also seen them and other protesters from other protest movements getting off the hook for criminal damage and things that they really probably should have been punished for in some way. I'm not necessarily suggesting a jail sentence, but in some cases, absolutely.
They are being overly punished. And I think if I get into like a Just Stop Oil frame of mind now, I would say...
Not very difficult.
Right, let me get in. The urgency that they feel and that they see coming towards us far outstrips any disruption.
That's not their decision to make, is it?
Though that's part of the problem. Because if you have a protest group that is almost apocalyptically sure of itself, that they think that they are solely, you know, the sort of champions, the crusaders of their cause, and that they have to do this in order to save the world, and that nothing will stand in their way, even if it means putting people's lives at risk, which we've seen. So when they block the road and they block ambulances from going through, they are putting people's lives at risk. So if people break the law in the course of protesting, absolutely they should be arrested and charged and punished appropriately. That's not punishing them for protesting, it's punishing them for breaking the law.
But they would be keen to stress that they do have that blue light policy where they let ambulances
We've seen them not doing that, though. We've got it on footage.
And that a lot of them have been taken into custody over very minor things. And what we saw, I know this is a different protest group, but for example, the Not My King protests on the day of the coronation, and they accidentally swooped up people, threw them into custody suites when they weren't even anything to do with the protest. So I think there is an over-policing of these protests.
I think the problem... Yeah, go on.
When there are people arrested, and we've seen this live on our show, we've been at some of these protests where deliberately this group of Just Stop Oil people line up to step into the road and a policeman stands there and says, under section whatever of the Public Order Act, if you step into this road, I will arrest you. And then some of them perhaps think better of it and don't do it, and the ones that do get arrested. They are making a conscious choice to be arrested for a political cause. That's entirely on them.
But that's something that they see as so existential, and a lot of Just Support is made up of climate scientists. And
Is it?
It is. Who's Nathan,
Tarquin, and usually
1 in 10, 1 in 20.
And I saw an example this week of a 70-year-old grandma and grandfather who were thrown into prison over protesting what they see as an existential threat to the climate.
Because
What's
they
the point of
wanted
putting
to
them into
be.
prison?
Did he or she mind? Because a lot of them seem to want to get
martyred,
arrested. It's like, yeah, martyrdom. There you go.
There have been examples.
The problem is, Amy, though, isn't it, that if everyone behaved like that, then we wouldn't really have a society, would we? We wouldn't have a functioning economy, that's
surely
for sure.
more important to protect our right to protest than to come up with this kind of whataboutery of
what if people who believed that abortion is morally wrong and a sin and babies are being killed thought it was so existential that they started lying in the road too? Where do we... I mean, if
Right,
every
Tom,
group does
we're going to have to leave our viewers and everyone at home on that bombshell, because up next it's Martin Dumley. Thank you very much, Amy.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It will stay cloudy and rather mild for many of us through the rest of the day, but overnight it does turn windier across the north as well as wetter too. That's because we've got this string of weather fronts out in the Atlantic. They'll continue to stream in wet weather across northern areas of the UK, particularly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it will stay dry through the rest of the evening. We'll see some clear spells in the south and east, so it will feel a little bit cooler here, but elsewhere we've got a strong breeze and a southerly breeze and very mild air for the time of year. So it will be an exceptionally mild night tonight, with temperatures not dipping much below 10 or 11 degrees for parts of Scotland. However, it will stay quite wet and windy across parts of Scotland throughout Saturday, and into the afternoon the rain will become quite heavy and persistent. Further south, though, it will stay dry once again through much of the day, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around. However, it's still staying very mild through Saturday and through much of the weekend as well, with highs of around 12 to 13 degrees across the UK, which is quite high for this time of year. However, the persistent rain across Scotland will continue through Saturday night and won't relent all the way through Sunday as well. So we do have an amber rain warning in force for parts of the Highlands and into the Argyll as well. A yellow warning as well more widely. That rain will sink southwards into Monday and Tuesday to more southern areas of the UK, allowing cooler air to arrive in the north.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist. And you survived? I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified on playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com.